Hey guys, welcome to our new series called The Dream 80. So in this series, I purchased a property. My wife and I purchased an 80-acre tract. So we're calling it The Dream 80. This farm is just awesome for many different reasons. Everybody that is interested in buying the perfect farm, the perfect 40, 80, 120, 160, whatever the property might be. This one has some awesome features. We had to work through quite a few different things from start to finish, but we're going to take you along through this entire series through three phases. The first one is going to be identification, and we're going to go through how you find a farm, why it worked for us, about the financing, the money, the down payment, 1031 exchanges, anything that might be in the introduction stage. The second phase is going to be about improving the property and some of the reasons why we're improving the property for the future, for money and financial reasons, for access, for hunting, for buildable sites, whatever that may be. And then the third phase is going to be about how what's the management look like? What do the improvements look like? What is the deer quality or the hunting quality or the building quality today versus what is it after the improvements had happened, and kind of just the final polished result. So tag along through this series and hopefully we teach you something along the way. So the first thing that we did was narrow the scope. I think that's the easiest thing to do when you're looking to buy land, real estate, or real estate in general, is narrow the scope. So one of the biggest mistakes I made when I started buying land was my scope was too big, or even rental properties, the scope was too big. So instead of identifying I want to buy a farm, for example, it's better to say I want to buy a farm in what state, what county, what township, what section. Narrow it all the way down, and when I bought the first farm, I literally had a couple mile circles on maps in a township that I wanted to be in these specific sections or multiple sections identified in a township, in a county, in a state, instead of saying blanket that I just want to buy a farm in this state and not having a very narrowed focus. So narrowing the scope down to exactly where you want to be for whatever reason is definitely the first step in the process. The second thing that I look for when buying any real estate, or especially a farm, is the type. So with a farm, is it a tillable farm, and of what quality am I after, for what reason? Maybe it's in proximity to a hog building that you own that produces manure, or maybe it's close to your farm for transportation of grain to the grain storage facility or to the elevator, to the ethanol plant. From a hunting property, how much percentage do you want into timber ground compared to tillable ground? Do you want CRP? Do you want a buildable site? What is the future of the property going to be? Are you going to buy that property for the intentions of building a forever home on it, or is it a building block farm where you're going to buy X amount of acres in hopes to double or triple those acres? Are you going to buy in a neighborhood that you want to expand onto the sides of that farm to make it more acres right adjacent to one another? And in looking for those sort of deals, you have to realize, is the land going to be available for purchase next door, or is it generational land that's going to continue to be in those families for the next generation or two or three and not provide those opportunities? So narrowing the scope is definitely number one, and then secondary to that, what type of property and for what future intentions do you have for the future goals of the land ownership? So the third thing to go on top of that is the geographic location and accessibility. How close, if it's a deer hunting farm, for example, are you going to have to get up at midnight or stay overnight in a hotel in a different state? Are there tags available in that state and in that zone for you as a non-resident? If it's in the state or in the county or in the general vicinity of where you already live, how early are you going to have to get up to go to that property? If there's a problem there, how close are you to it? If your trail camera dies, how close are you to going and taking care of that problem? Is it a 20-minute drive outside of town? Are you going to live on that property? Or is it a 5-hour drive across state lines? So you really have to identify the geographic location for those reasons, as well as when you're looking at the geographic location of the physical property. One thing that I always made the mistake of was realizing that I might want to bring other people to the property, and if I do that, are we going to be able to buy hand warmers in town? Are we going to be able to go get a nice dinner in town? Are we going to be able to take the UTV to get a new rim when we broke something, or get it fixed, or to take the tractor or the equipment there to do the project that we want to? Is there rental places to rent skid steers and to buy gates and fencing and trail cameras and tree stands and hardware within the proximity? Or is it many miles or even hours outside of a town in a super rural area. So the actual geographic location is very important of the property, as well as in what proximity is it to a town or another thing that you want to maybe do while you're at the farm. Is it close to the river where you can go fishing, or is it close to a town where you can get a repair? Is it close to towns where you can get things that you want to have experiences while you have that real estate, or while you have other people at that real estate with you? So number 3, definitely geographic location for other reasons outside the property. Number 4 is definitely the price. If you look at the price, you're going to look at your financing options, whether that's contract for deed, bank financing via conventional mortgage or in-house mortgage. What is the price that I can afford for the property? Which gets us into number 5, which is the size of the property. If land is selling for $5,000 an acre versus $10,000 an acre, you can afford double the acres where it's half the price. So it'll automatically identify which properties in the narrowed scope you're able to afford based on the price, and that'll automatically tell you the size of the properties that you should identify when you're looking for a property. And with this property, we were looking between 40 and 120 acres, and the 80 was the perfect size from a price perspective, as well as telling us how much land that we wanted in that specific area, ending at 80 acres. Number 6 is definitely the thing that we needed to look for once we did identify the properties that were available for purchase or potentially could be purchased from a current landowner. And when we looked at those properties, we're back to the topic of location, 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 and what's within its borders. How does the access look on the property? What improvements can be made to it, or are they already done? And if they are, what financial increase are we willing to pay for those improvements if they're exactly what we already have? Is there invasive species, like I said? What's the timber quality? Is there water? When we look at a property, we're always looking at what the neighborhood looks like within a few miles. If it's from a deer hunting perspective, what's going to make that property the absolute dream of the center of attention from a deer's perspective? So when we were looking for this Dream 80, we wanted it to be the greatest hunting farm possible, so it needed to be in a great neighborhood. It needed to have opportunities to improve it, to make sure that everything that a high quality top-end deer would want on a property, as well as it would have to have some financial opportunity via tillable ground, CRP, or timber, and we wanted it to be buildable and secluded. So looking at other intentions for this Dream 80, and if it's going to be the perfect property, we have to identify what bones is it going to have in order for it to be that dream property when it's finished. And is it finished already, and is it something that we can purchase within a feasible price for those improvements to be completed? So that's the 6 top things in a list form that we did to narrow the scope on this property in a tight area. And if you're looking for land, that is one of the biggest things that I would recommend. First and foremost is narrow your scope. It's going to make the daunting task of buying a farm for your intentions very, very narrow, and going to allow you to focus and learn what you need to about the market in those individual areas to make sure you get the best deal you possibly can.